Okay, Abby.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the virtual public meeting for the Brighton Approach Bridge Improvement Project. My name's Abby. I'm going to quickly cover how to participate. So first, audio settings. If you're accessing the meeting via public input, you'll automatically be connected through whatever device you may be joining on, whether that be your computer with a pair of speakers or headset, on your smartphone or another tablet or device. If you're joining us by phone, your audio will connect automatically to your smartphone or your tablet or device if it has that capability to call in. If you see us, the presenters, talking, but you don't hear us, you can try changing your audio connection. And if you have trouble with that or another issue with your video, you can always use the chat box to send a message to the team and we can try to help you troubleshoot. If your video isn't clear, you can try adjusting the settings. You can click on that little cog icon in the bottom right-hand corner. That's the settings icon. And if you hit quality, you can then select a number, and the higher the number, the better quality the video will be. So just some guidelines for tonight's meeting. The meeting format will have a presentation followed by a question and answer session, and we'll review how to provide questions and comments at the end of the presentation. Some other items: the meeting is being recorded. All the comments and this video are public record. Please be respectful in the chat box and also in your audio when we join at the end for the question and answer session. For the question and answer session, if you have a question and we'll need to either get more data or kind of discuss amongst the project team before providing a response, you may get a response after tonight's meeting provided in writing to you, but we will try to get you a response either tonight or shortly after. So now I will turn it over to Ursula from the City of Cincinnati to introduce tonight's speakers.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ursula Miller. Thanks, Abby. I'm Communications Manager for the Department of Transportation for the City of Cincinnati. Tonight, the speakers will be Brandon LaCrone, who's the Project Manager for the Brighton Approach Bridge, and Brad Ackle, our Consulting Project Engineer with Carpenter Marty Transportation. Tonight, Brandon and Brad are going to be talking about several topics. We'll give some background and the purpose for the project. Brad will talk about the alternatives that are under consideration, the historic considerations of the bridge, next steps, and then, as Abby mentioned, the question and answer session afterward. So thanks, and I'll hand it over to Brandon now.
Thanks, Ursula. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Brandon LaCrone, and I'm an engineer with the City of Cincinnati Department of Transportation and Engineering, and the project manager for the Brighton Approach Bridge project. So first, I'd like to take a minute to familiarize everyone with where the bridge is located. It's located about 2 miles north of downtown. It crosses over top of Central Parkway, just south of the Western Hills Viaduct, and just east of Interstate 75. And as you can see in the image here, the map, the bridge runs generally in a north-south direction, and it carries vehicles and pedestrians between Central, Coleraine, and Harrison Avenues at its south end, and West McMillan Avenue at its north end. And it also happens to be located at a point where 3 Cincinnati neighborhoods actually intersect. So the West End to the south, the Cuff neighborhood to the north, and Over-the-Rhine just to the east. Pardon me. So this is just a little more close-up of the bridge to get an idea of what it looks like. So the image on the left is looking north across the bridge. And as you can see, there is a sidewalk on the right or east side and 2 traffic lanes, 1 in each direction. And on the right-hand side, we're looking west along Central Parkway beneath the bridge. And as you can see, Central Parkway has 4 traffic lanes, 2 in each direction, with bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides. And one thing you'll note from this photo is the where the bridge columns are located right at the edge of the street and actually kind of partially block the sidewalks along Central Parkway. So why are we doing the project? And we developed sort of our statement of to kind of guide us through as the purpose and need statement. And there's obviously two elements to this, the purpose and the need. And so the purpose can be thought of as kind of the big picture reason for doing this particular project. And while the need is more specifically about what exactly needs to be done to accomplish the purpose. For this project, our stated purpose is to improve or maintain safety on the Brighton Approach Bridge and Central Parkway. As far as the more specific need element, our primary need is to address the structural deficiencies of the bridge. So just to be clear, the bridge is safe to use for all legally permitted vehicles, but if it's to remain in a safe condition into the future, we need to address the structural deficiencies. So some of the things that are currently causing the structural deficiencies are widespread deterioration, including advanced section loss, spalling, and this results in an overall condition rating of the bridge of poor. I just want to pause for a second and address a couple of terms here that may not be familiar to everyone, just to give you an idea of the kinds of structural deficiencies in the condition that we're talking about. So the term section loss means that material that would otherwise provide structural strength to the bridge is missing due to rusting or other deterioration. The section loss in this case primarily refers to the rusting reinforcing steel bars that are embedded in the concrete. The term spalling refers to a specific type of section loss where layers of concrete become loose and fall off. And you can see in this image that there are large areas where spalling has occurred, exposing the embedded reinforcing steel bars, which are rusting, and that's what's causing the section loss of the bars. So at least in part due to the bridge's poor condition, we have weight limits currently placed on the bridge, which reduce the maximum allowable weight of trucks that can use the bridge by up to about 30%. So we talked about the primary need for the project, and that's sort of the main reason that we're needing to do something. But in addition to that, we have identified several additional secondary needs or goals. And some of these include increasing the vertical clearance under the bridge to current minimum standards. And this is to give vehicles adequate room to safely pass beneath the bridge without hitting it. Another need or goal is to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety and access. And the photos on this slide illustrate some of the specifics of this particular goal. As you can see, and as I mentioned earlier, the existing bridge support columns effectively block the sidewalks along Central Parkway. Looking at the photo on the top left, the pedestrians on the south side of the parkway are forced to meander between the bridge support columns in sort of this hidden area that's unlighted under this south part of the bridge. And looking at this bottom left photo, you can see that this area is often littered with trash. It attracts encampments, and the presence of trash and debris also presents a fire hazard. The north sidewalk, which is shown in the photo on the right, narrows down to less than 2 feet wide, passing under the bridge and squeezing behind the column. And it also tends to accumulate blowing trash and debris. So these conditions make passage for pedestrians difficult, unsafe, and particularly for those in wheelchairs, practically impossible. Addressing the remaining secondary needs, and those include addressing a connection between the neighborhoods and streets, addressing the historic nature of the bridge and surrounding sites, and lastly, eliminating a situation that we currently have where the bridge is supported on top of the existing subway tunnel. And I'd like to highlight these last 2 points a little further on the next couple slides. So first, I want to discuss the historic considerations So the Brighton Approach Bridge was originally constructed around 1926. And although it's not formally listed on the National Register of Historic Places, it has been determined to be eligible to be listed and is therefore considered to be an historic property. The type of bridge construction is actually fairly common and isn't particularly historically significant in and of itself, though the bridge does have some interesting architectural features, including the railing and light fixtures. But rather, the bridge derives its historic significance primarily from its association with the construction of Central Parkway and the abandoned Cincinnati subway. Because it is considered an historic property, there is a process that must be undertaken to consider the effects of the project on the bridge and how to mitigate those effects. And a little later, after Brad reviews the proposed alternatives, we'll explain a little bit more about that process and how you can participate. And the final point related to the secondary needs that I want to mention is the fact that the bridge actually sits partially on top of the existing subway tunnel, and explain why this is a potential issue. So the red dashed lines here on this picture indicate the outline of the underground subway tunnel, and you can see it crosses directly beneath the south portion of the bridge. And as I mentioned, the roof of the subway tunnel actually supports part of the bridge foundations. So this situation complicates future maintenance and repairs of the aging tunnel. And there's currently a large diameter water main inside the tunnel and several communication cables. And this situation also is a potential risk to the bridge itself in the event of an issue with the tunnel. So now I'll explain a little bit about why we're doing the project. Let me just give you a little more background as to how we got where we are on the project and kind of what's taken place up until now and how we've narrowed things down to the alternatives or the options that are still being considered that we'll present to you shortly. Back in 2016, a feasibility study was conducted to investigate repairing the bridge. This study included detailed inspections, some concrete core samples, and testing. And this photo here is actually one of the core samples taken from this very bridge. The result of this study indicated that the deterioration was more advanced and widespread than was apparent. And ODOT and the city have agreed that the condition of the concrete is just too poor for the needed repairs to be successful. An additional study completed in 2017 evaluated 7 alternatives to either remove the bridge, replace portions of it, or replace it entirely. And this study indicated that replacing portions of the bridge would have long-term repair and maintenance costs that are 2 to 3 times higher than for a new bridge, and that these types of repairs would have a service life of only about a quarter to a half that for a new bridge. And on top of all that, obviously, the repairing the bridge would not address many of the needs that we discussed previously. So based on this information, the rehabilitation options were determined not to be feasible. So the city has been working closely with our engineering consultant, Carpenter Marty Transportation, to further study 4 alternatives to either remove or replace the bridge. And with that, I will turn it over to Brad Ackle from Carpenter Marty to review those alternatives now.
Thanks, Brandon. I want to start with, before we get into the 4 alternatives, I want to start with the criteria that we're using to kind of compare and evaluate each alternative. As Brandon mentioned earlier, in the purpose and need, the primary need of the project is to address the structural deficiencies of the bridge. So that's kind of our number 1 evaluation criteria. Then we'll be looking at some of the other items that are issues that he discussed, the increasing the vertical clearance, improving pedestrian and bike safety on Central Parkway. We have the historic considerations, the costs of each alternative, and preserving the connections between the neighborhoods. And then also the public feedback that we get from you today, and then in the next few weeks. So the 4 alternatives under consideration right now, the first alternative is a no-build alternative. So no improvements, continued maintenance only of the bridge. The second alternative would be to remove and replace the bridge with a new bridge for vehicles and pedestrians. The third alternative is to replace it with a new bridge for pedestrians only. And then the fourth alternative would be to remove the bridge, no bridge replacement, and add new pedestrian and ADA accessible pathway to the east of the bridge near Brighton Place at the light to the east. So we'll look at that a little bit later in the slides. So the first alternative, as I mentioned, this is the no build. The city would just maintain the bridge as is with routine maintenance. The bridge only has about a 5 to 15 year life expectancy as is. So the life cycle costs for this alternate are very high. And when we'll talk about life cycle costs later on the other alternatives too. And these are things like painting the bridge, replacing the bridge deck, replacing joints on the deck. So this alternate, in comparison to the other ones, would have a very high life cycle costs. This alternate would maintain the connection between the neighborhoods. It's a relatively low construction cost, but then we're not addressing the main issue of the structural deficiency of the bridge. We're also not addressing the pedestrian and bicycle safety under the bridge on Central Parkway. So you can see the bike lanes are very close to the piers, and that makes it a little bit more difficult for bikes to get under through the bridge. So and then just as Brandon mentioned earlier, the sidewalks on Central Parkway are very narrow. The alternative 2 would be to remove the bridge entirely and build a new bridge for vehicles and pedestrians, essentially be in the same location, pretty much similar geometry. It's a pretty tight area that we have to work with to get down from Mcmillan down to Coleraine Avenue. And we have businesses and drives on Coleraine Avenue that would still need to be accessed. There's not a whole lot that we can do with the geometry. We would be able to move the piers of the bridge back, so that would increase the pedestrian and bicycle access on Central Parkway. We would be able to provide better vertical clearance for trucks driving on Central Parkway, getting under the bridge. It maintains the pedestrian and vehicular connection that's already there between the West End and Cuff. And this alternate would also have a relatively low life cycle cost. Now, this alternative does adversely impact the potentially the historically eligible bridge. We're essentially removing that bridge. And then we'd also have this alternate is a relatively high cost alternative. Now, there are some things we can do to mitigate the historic aspect of the bridge. We can include a plaque on the site commemorating the old bridge. We can also add some of the aesthetic features to the new bridge design, including the railing or lighting, or even underneath on the piers to try and mimic some of the old aesthetics of the old bridge. So that is alternative 2. Alternative 3 would be also to remove the bridge and replace it with a pedestrian only type bridge. Again, it'd be in about the same location, and it would require an ADA compliant ramp, which you'll see here. We've got a couple renderings, and all these photos that we're showing are just renderings. They're just to try to give you an idea of what a potential solution may be. Nothing that's a final design or anything. So you see these the bridge basically crosses at the same spot. It'd be a narrow bridge, and it would be, again, for pedestrians only, not designed for vehicular weight or anything. Again, the ramp itself would need to slope such that to meet ADA standards, so that somebody in a wheelchair could make their way up the ramp. So this alternative, we are maintaining a connection for pedestrians. We are improving the pedestrian and bicycle access under the bridge on Central Parkway. We're able to meet the vertical clearance for larger vehicles and trucks to make their way under the bridge. This alternative is a mid to high cost alternative, and then a relatively low life cycle cost for this alternative. Again, similar to alternative 2, we are impacting the historic the eligible bridge. So again, we do some kind of commemorating plaque or incorporating aspects of the bridge into the new bridge. Another issue here, or kind of the con for this alternative, is we're losing that vehicular connection. So now that we have done some preliminary traffic studies, we've taken traffic counts out there, and essentially you're moving traffic to either Ravine Street to the east or to Mcmillan Street to the west. So traffic that wants to move north and south from West End through up to Cuff, you'd get on Central Parkway to Ravine Street, and then McMicken, and vice versa from McMicken down to Ravine, and then down to Brighton Place, where you see the traffic light in the middle of the map there. And then the other route that you can go, just going north, because currently there's no left turn on West McMillan, so you could go north from Brighton Place, Central Parkway, then up to West McMillan Street. So the little bit more on the traffic. We've done some analysis, and the traffic volume on Brighton Place Bridge is relatively low. So there's not going to be a major impact to delays at Ravine Street or at West McMillan. So although the Ravine Street does see some delays now for people coming south and getting onto Central Parkway, but those are existing issues as it is. So that is the pedestrian connection. That's alternate 3. And then alternative 4 would be to remove the bridge and with no replacement. So no new bridge. We would create a new accessible pathway between Central and McMicken that would be ADA accessible. The city owns property just north of Brighton Place. You see it in the map there, the new ADA pathway, or the rendering there. So that ramp, again, you see it's long and it's a switchback. So it would meet ADA requirements for somebody in a wheelchair to be able to traverse their way up there. This alternative, again, addresses the structural deficiency of the bridge by removing the bridge. We're addressing the pedestrian vehicular access down along Central Parkway, and we are addressing vertical clearance issues that currently exist. This is definitely a low cost option, the lowest of the 3 build options, and very low life cycle cost. We are removing the historic bridge. Again, we'd have to see what kind of mitigation we can do, and we're losing that direct vehicular connection similar to alternative 3. We still would be able to maintain the pedestrian connection, just having to take a little bit different route to cross at the light at Brighton Place. So that's a quick look at the four alternatives. We want to show you where we are right now with our cost estimates. Right now, these are pretty preliminary cost estimates. And these are construction costs only. So alternative one has no construction cost. That is the no build alternate. Alternative two is the full vehicle and pedestrian replacement bridge. That's 4.9 million. The alternative three, the pedestrian only, is around 3.7 million. And then removing the bridge and adding that new switchback pedestrian access is 1.5 million. The city currently has about 3.2 million. So obviously alternatives 2 and 3 would need to find additional funding sources to make up the difference there. You know, our primary goal for this project is to build a safe, accessible, and user-friendly connection between Cuff and West End. So, you know, we want whether that's a new bridge or a pedestrian connection, we want to get your input and feedback because that's an important part of our process, of our project design process, and we look forward to hearing from you. I'm going to turn it back over to Brandon, and he's going to talk a little bit more about how you can provide that feedback.
All right, thank you, Brad. So as Brad said, I'd like to go over some next steps on how you can participate and give us your feedback. So there are a number of ways you can do that. And the first way is right here tonight, where we're starting shortly. We'll open it up and be taking your questions. And Abby will be going over more detailed instructions about how to do that in just a moment. In addition, we have a feedback form or a survey located on the project webpage at cincinnati-oh.gov/Brighton. And once there, you'll scroll down to the tab that says Your Feedback. And this is basically a survey with several questions to help you provide us with your feedback. And we encourage everyone to go complete that brief survey at some point after tonight's meeting. If you think of a question or comment later, or you're unable to stick around for the live question and answer session tonight, you can also call or email me directly. My contact information should be on the very web page where you're watching the meeting tonight, down near the bottom, as well as on the city's project web page, which I just mentioned above. On that page, you'll go to Project Contact and you'll find my contact information there. And we'll also put that information up on a slide here shortly. And the final way for you to participate that I want to cover is to become a consulting party. And this is the process that I alluded to earlier regarding the consideration of effects on historic properties. And I'll go over this process a little more on this next slide. So Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires federal agencies to consider the effects of their actions on historic properties and to consult with other parties who have an interest in the effects on historic properties. And when I say federal agencies, obviously the city is not a federal agency, but we are receiving a federal grant for construction of the project. And so we fall under all the federal requirements. So the law defines these other parties as consulting parties, and the process is referred to as the Section 106 consulting party process, referring back to the section of the National Historic Preservation Act. So as far as who the consulting parties are, they include some organizations who are required to participate and others who are invited to participate and may do so if they choose. The first three listed here are the required consulting parties, and they include the Ohio Department of Transportation, the State Historic Preservation Office, and the local public agency, which in this case is the City of Cincinnati. The last item listed here are those who are referred to as invited consulting parties. And for invited consulting parties to be considered, there is a very basic application to fill out and submit to ODOT, who in conjunction with the State Historic Preservation Office will review all applications. And upon acceptance, ODOT will issue a formal written notification to the applicant. As far as what consulting parties do, they will be provided opportunities to participate in the Section 106 process throughout project development. And depending on the nature of the project, that may include things like assisting in the identification of other consulting parties, providing local expertise about the historic resource. They may review and comment on project documentation and participate in the identification of measures to mitigate adverse effects on historic properties. So more information in an application form can be found on the project webpage, which we list here again is cincinnati-oh.gov/Brighton. And you'll scroll down to the tab that says Historic Preservation Consulting Party Process. And again, if you missed this webpage link before we move on from this slide, it's also listed on this meeting webpage that you're on right now watching the meeting. And we'll also make sure to show this link again before the meeting ends. So we discussed next steps for how you could participate. And so now let's take a look ahead at the next steps for the project. So we are following a process consisting of these 5 major steps shown here. And right now we're at the point in the process indicated by the "We are here" arrow there at the top, which is right at the tail end of the preliminary engineering phase. And we're just getting started with the environmental phase. And the environmental phase will carry over into 2022, and in some aspects will actually overlap with the next phase after that, which is the final engineering and right-of-way phase. And that will begin coming up here in early 2022. And then finally, we anticipate construction to take place in 2023 and 2024. This is more of a kind of a long-term overview of the next steps. So on the next slide, I'll show you our specific next steps in the short term. So the immediate next step is getting your feedback. And we're happy to receive that at any time throughout the development of the project. But to be included in the official documentation, we do have a November 19th, 2021 comment deadline. And this is in place for us to be able to respond to your comments and to complete the official environmental documentation in order to select an alternative and keep the project moving forward on schedule. By January 30th, 2022, we will have selected an alternative and be moving into final design. And at this time, as I mentioned previously, we anticipate that construction will begin in the fall of 2023. I just want to thank you so much for your attention. I know that's a lot of information, and I'll turn it back over to Abby to kick off the question and answer session.
All right, thank you so much, Brandon. So for this question and answer portion, for those of you joining online via publicinput.com, you can type your questions into the chat box. And by chat box, we mean that little box that's either to the right of the video that you're watching right now, if you're on your computer, or it may be below the video if you're on another device, such as a tablet, or maybe you're joining us on your phone. It's a little box that says your meeting question or comment, and you can just type your question in there, and then if you hit that blue comment button, that will submit your comment, and then we will be reviewing those and reading them out loud and then providing a response. So for those joining by telephone, or if you'd like to call in so that you can speak to the project team, you can dial 855-925-2801 and enter in the code 9383 And there may be a long pause after you enter in the code, but don't worry, you will eventually join us. And then if you hit the dial star and then 3, you will enter the speaker queue, and then you'll hear a little voice that prompts you when it's your turn to speak, and then you'll be connected with us and you can give us your comment. So we already got a question in the chat box. The question was, will the Brighton Bridge be impacted by the proposed Western Hills Viaduct replacement? And if yes, how? MOT. I'm assuming the MOT is maintenance of traffic. So Brandon, I think I'm going to kick this one to you to answer.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we don't really anticipate that the Western Hills Viaduct project will impact the Brighton Bridge, both in terms of just the timing of the construction and the finished products of each. The construction schedule for Brighton has us, complete in 2024. I believe at present, the timeline for Western Hills Viaduct has it starting at the earliest in 2024, but that would be items probably not near this area. So there shouldn't be any overlap in the construction schedules that might, we've got maintenance of traffic issues going on for Brighton. Probably won't have any such things going on for the Western Hills Viaduct at that time until the Brighton Bridge project would be completed. I know Bill Shefsick's on here, the project manager for Western Hills Viaduct. So if I say anything incorrect or if he wants to add to that, feel free to chime in. If not, that's fine.
No, Brandon, that sounds good. It's all correct. Just for everybody's sake, Brandon and I work together. Our offices are right down the hall from each other, so we're in daily contact. So there's close coordination between the two projects, but what Brandon said is absolutely correct.
Great.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Brandon and Bill. So we got another question here. It is traffic patterns at both Ravine and the Brighton Approach intersection network are a mess. Brighton in particular has been a magnet for car accidents. Would alternative 2's design simplify this intersection to make it less confusing or prone to abuse by negligent drivers? Also, I must add that I think, sorry, here, scrolling down. I think removing vehicular access would be detrimental to the area as a whole by contesting the Ravine Central Mcmillan intersections more. So,
I can
Brad,
take
I
that
think,
one.
okay, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so we are aware of the Ravine and Central Parkway traffic issue. We've been working with the city on that. We actually did some additional traffic counts with cameras and have kind of analyzed that intersection. So it is something we're aware of, and whichever alternate is selected, we'll do a deeper dive into how whichever alternate affects that traffic. Specific to that where Brighton meets Coleraine and Central Avenue, the alternative 2 potentially could improve that intersection. It's just so tight there. There's not a lot of room. We have to maintain access on Coleraine Avenue to the driveways. There's a cell tower back there we need to maintain access to. So it's very tight, but we would look at ways to potentially improve that access and to make it more obvious to drivers what they're doing there. So
Thanks, Brad. Our next question, if the bridge is removed and not replaced like in alternative 4, what would happen to the extra space created between Central Parkway and Coleraine?
So I think that's something that we can look out a little bit closer, but right now we're assuming that we'll be able to, you know, put wider sidewalk in there, and then it could potentially just be a grass area, you know, just to the east of there is already some artwork, a sculpture there, and I don't know if that's something that can be, you know, added to. It could also be a place to, you know, commemorate the bridge with a plaque, or you know, I keep saying a plaque. It can be there's many different ways to help commemorate that. I don't know, Brandon, if there's any other thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, any and all those things, I think that's something we would want to work closely with the communities on.
Yeah, yeah,
What you'd want to see there. You know, it could be nice green open space. It would open up views to the south. It would, you know, in some sense create a sort of a more of a visual connection, because you're removing sort of the visual barrier of the bridge that's there now. But yeah, that's sort of like a bit of an open palette at this point, a blank slate. That
Yep.
could be something
Yep.
we could work on with communities as far as what would go there.
Thank you. The next question is, you mentioned that the bridge is eligible for the National Register, but the process has not been completed. If completed, would this allow additional funding sources, grants, etc.? Brandon, I think I might have you take a stab at this.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. And I don't know that the process has been started, other than that the bridge has been evaluated by ODOT at some point in the past to determine its eligibility. So there's not been a formal process started at this point. As far as additional funding sources, there are some funding sources, from what I understand, that specifically address historic bridges. Not too familiar with what some of those consist of, but that would certainly be one of the, you know, and unless I believe those funding sources would only apply to, you know, preserving the bridge, honestly, and that kind of, you know, as we talked about earlier, that ship has kind of sailed here. So I'm not sure if that would apply to any sort of commemoration or any other work that we're contemplating at this point.
Thanks, Brandon. We got a comment in the chat. I think this is more of just a note. It says, please note that the Western Hills Viaduct project will construct intersection improvements at the Central Parkway and West Mcmillan Street intersection, including providing the ability to make a left turn from westbound Mcmillan to southbound Central Parkway.
yeah,
Brad,
yeah.
I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, that was something we had discussed, but yeah, it's a ways out before that's completed. But yes, that is correct. That would make that north-south connection a little bit, you know, split it up a little bit more between Ravine and West Mcmillan there. Yep.
Okay, great. Doesn't look like we have anyone in the speaker queue, so we'll do a couple more questions here. If you build a new bridge for vehicles and pedestrians, will it be ADA accessible? Brad, I'll have you answer that.
So the bridge profile would essentially be similar to the existing bridge profile, just because of the geometry, the having to get up to Mcmillan and down to Central Avenue, Coleraine Avenue very quickly. So that profile does not meet ADA standards right now. If it was just a pedestrian bridge, given that it's a road bridge, the sidewalk would just follow that alignment. So although the sidewalk's not meeting ADA requirements, it's still, since it's attached to a roadway, it's still, you know, that's the way it would be built. There's, you know, there's a little bit of, you know, when a sidewalk's attached to or next to a road, you can't, you know, make a different slope or profile for that sidewalk, which when we're putting just the pedestrian bridge in, you know, we can adjust that profile to be sloped flatter so that it does meet ADA requirements. So I don't know if I answered that question. It would not, it is not, it would not be very accessible for somebody in a wheelchair to, as it isn't now. It's the same way now. It's pretty steep for somebody in a wheelchair to have to access that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's
Brad.
true. It is quite steep, and it's difficult, I think, to maneuver a wheelchair, particularly up that
Yeah.
ramp, maybe even down. And that's kind of, yeah, that's obviously a downside of replacing the bridge with a new bridge for both cars and pedestrians. If you just don't have room to slope a bridge for cars flat enough to also, you know, meet the ADA requirements to the letter.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. We got a comment that says, oops, sorry here, scrolling down. 30 years ago, when I moved to Mcmillan, I learned that the Brighton overpass was slated for demolition. I created a petition and gathered signatures, as well as sitting on the bridge for a day, counting cars and pedestrians. The bridge was totally renovated at a cost of $1.5 million. It won many awards, including Best Bridge. Sorry here. Sorry, my thing keeps moving around. Best Bridge Renovation in the state of Ohio and Historic Preservation Awards. This neighborhood wants a bridge renovated. We do not want a plaque. Brandon, I think this kind of talks about the project history a little bit, and so I think I'm going to have you take this question.
Yeah, I apologize for if we said plaque. I think that was just sort of a, you know, if we're going to commemorate the bridge, I think we'd want to do something a little bit more appropriate than a plaque. So, you know, we certainly take your point on that. And I appreciate the comments, kind of things that we want to hear from folks. We want to know where people stand on it. And, you know, like we pointed out before, we're kind of past the point of renovation. You know, even if we could do it for $1.5 million today, which would be great. You know, that number has ballooned over the years just for inflation, and as the bridge has aged further. So you know, thanks for the comment. I appreciate that, and we certainly take all that feedback into consideration.
Thanks, Brandon. We have a caller on the line, so Jackie, who's working the back end, will connect our caller, and then we will hear what they have for a question or comment.
Hi, I actually wrote the comment that she just read because I wasn't sure if I get in the speaker line. But when I moved here, I found out that the Brighton Bridge was going to be demolished. It was in the budget for demolition that year. And so, as I said, I took a petition. I was about 7 months pregnant, and I sat on the bridge for not a day, but a week, and counted cars and pedestrians. And a lot of kids go to school down on that in the West End and back and forth. In any case, you know, it did get renovated. I don't understand why it can't be renovated again. It was in very bad shape when it was renovated then. And I personally think it'll be so detrimental to this neighborhood from just a connection, a physical connection to the West End, to the businesses in Brighton, et cetera, but also because it's a significant historical bridge, and we're already going to lose the Brighton Hills, the Western Hills Viaduct, which was built in the same time period. And so I think that's going to get a plaque too, apparently, from where it used to be. But I think these pedestrian things and stuff, you know, not keeping the bridge at all, I have no interest in them, honestly. And we already have a lot of petition. We have a lot of signatures for a petition from our neighborhood. So I'm just, you know, the city and the people that were supposed to take care of this bridge, we just had a major cleanup there on the weekend because it never has any attention. And I really think one of the reasons it's in bad shape is because of the tons of metro buses that come rolling across it to go back to the barns. And I think there could be money from this big transportation levy that was passed that could potentially be used for the bridge. And because I think that it's affected the life of the length of it because it has such heavy traffic on it from buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon, do you have any
Thank
follow-up
you.
comments?
We appreciate just I say we appreciate the comments and the transit infrastructure funding is certainly an option on the table to consider for funding. And it's like I said before, we want to hear people's feedback and what they think about it. So we appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Our next question is a chat question. Is there any interest by the city for a 5-to-3 road diet on Central Parkway to slow vehicle traffic and reduce the crossing distance for a potential option 4 build? So
I'm not sure if that is been looked at by the city. I know that there's quite a bit of traffic that runs on Central Parkway. I don't know if a road diet would work, but it's something we can discuss with the city a little bit further.
Thanks, Brad. We have another question, and it's asking, what was the available funding based on? How long might it take to get enough funding? Might the existing bridge last that long? Sorta money? Is it used by buses? So kind of, we can break that up. Maybe, Brandon,
Yeah, sure. I
you can
kind
talk
of
about the
just take those
funding.
one at a time.
Okay.
I assume he means like why do we have 3.2 versus more, and why don't we have enough? Well, it was based on some early estimates, and we do the best we can with those. We actually sometimes it's kind of the nature of projects to kind of grow in cost as you kind of get further into the details and start taking a look at what it's really going to take. So how long it might take to get enough funding? We're looking at some options right now, including OPWC. Those rounds of funding go every year. We're hoping that something like that would coincide with the schedule release of the federal funds. And as Brad mentioned earlier, we're estimating the remaining life of the bridge to be at 5 to 15 years. And the SORTA money is an option. I think we'll need to verify, its eligibility. As the previous caller mentioned, it appears the bridge is used by SORTA for returning buses back to the bus barn, but there's actually no metro bus routes that cross the bridge. So that would be something we'd need to discuss with SORTA about its eligibility for that funding.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question. The ramps for the pedestrian-only bridge look really long. How long is it? And are there other pedestrian bridges like it?
So yeah, the ramps are about I believe it's around 430 feet long, and that's to make up the distance, the vertical distance that we have to make up crossing Central Parkway and still meeting ADA requirements. There is an example. I think we have a photo. The Evanston Street over I-71. So that's, you can kind of see can you go back to the last one? So you can kind of see, that's right. You can kind of see the sloped sections and then a flat spot. That's part of the ADA requirement where you can only go at a certain maximum slopes for so many feet before you need kind of a resting area. So that's the reason for the length of those ramps.
Great, thanks, Brad.
And just to clarify, that's probably not what our ramp would look like, hopefully. That's just an example that is local that people might be familiar with to give you an idea of, the slope and the landings.
All right, we got another comment. Seems a similar sentiment to the caller. It says, I agree that removing the bridge without replacing would be extremely detrimental to the neighborhood and its potential growth in the future. Cincinnati has a bad history of neighborhood fragmentation. I, for one, utilize the bridge almost daily with my dog, but I have also driven and biked up and down the approach. My dream would be to see an updated connector with improved pedestrian and bicycling safety both on and under the bridge. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah, great. Appreciate the comment.
Yeah. All right, we have a couple more questions here. Which alternative does the city like best?
So I guess we've talked about this a bit internally. Let me just given the relatively low amount of vehicles that use the bridge and the cost of the alternatives and the available funding that we have currently, and we find it a little difficult to justify particularly replacing it with a vehicular bridge. The cost is really high. As Brad mentioned, the rerouting of traffic to the adjacent intersections, there at Ravine and Mcmillan. While they do add some traffic volume to those intersections, it's pretty minimal in relation to what goes through there now. And there is a delay at Ravine currently at certain peak times of the day. And the additional traffic from Brighton would minimally impact that, if at all. So that's kind of a separate issue. There's an issue there. So I guess where I'm going with this is it's the more money you're spending for a low amount of traffic is hard to justify. And so I guess from that standpoint, we maybe kind of tend to lean towards a pedestrian only that's a little bit lower cost, or even maintain the pedestrian connection on the hillside. But that's this process of getting public feedback. That's why we're here. We want to hear what you think as part of our decision-making process. And we've got some good comments tonight already, and we really appreciate those.
Definitely. Thanks, Brandon. All right, we do not have any callers in the queue. We'll go through a couple more questions. I think we already talked about this a little bit, but can we review what historic features of the current bridge you can keep if we are to remove the current bridge?
Yeah, I can address that. So the railing and the lighting in particular has kind of been identified as significant architectural features. The light fixtures, those are a candidate for actually reusing in a new bridge. We'd have to certainly verify their condition and that they could be successfully fitted with new luminaires or bulbs. Or at the very least, we could duplicate or select some lighting fixtures that are similar in appearance or appropriate to the period when the bridge was built. And the railing is something that we could probably mimic pretty easily. We've done that on several bridges around the city. This sort of window balustrade type railing. We probably can't reuse some of the railing, which has been suggested previously, but we certainly could sort of duplicate that in the railing on the new bridge. If alternative 4 is selected, there'd be an opportunity to possibly utilize some pieces of the old bridge railing, or even the lighting in a memorial feature for the bridge, something like that. And then I think Brad had mentioned earlier of, recreating some of the archwork that's under the bridge in the new bridge would be something that we could also do. And that's part of what, the consulting party process would look at, ways to mitigate the effect on the historic bridge. So those would be some of the ideas that group would talk about.
Great, thanks, Brandon. We have another question in the chat. It says, I own and have renovated the Flatiron building at the top of the Brighton Bridge as it intersects Mcmillan Avenue. We have a terrible problem with speeding cars along this curve of Mcmillan, which has actually wrecked into the building and also totaled parked cars. Reconfiguring the Brighton approach as it intersects Mcmillan Avenue could help to alleviate this problem. Could that be a part of the solution? They also say, as an architect, I'd like to volunteer my time with your design team. So Brad, I think if you could,
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So the kind of the limits of the project are contained, within the bridge itself. We really haven't looked at realigning the section from the north end of the bridge up to Mcmillan. That would most likely require some additional right-of-way. And again, the geometry of the bridge itself is a little tricky as it is. So trying to realign it anymore, it kind of creates more problems. Having the curve on the bridge as it is, it's pretty tight. So yeah, it's not really within the scope of the project, unfortunately.
Thanks, Brad. We got another question in the chat. It is, if it turns into a pedestrian bridge, could we at least stick with an Art Deco architecture?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That would be, I think, a goal of any replacement bridge, whether it's a full vehicular bridge or just for pedestrians, it would be to honor that original architecture.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about quite a bit with the city, with Brandon, is about how we would, replicate the railings, or at least it'd be concrete, or some of the archways, things like that. So yes.
All right, thanks, Brad. Okay, we have another comment here. And let me get this moved over. The comment says, I am a historic preservation professional and local resident. I believe there is additional historical significance with the bridge, as it is historically has provided connectivity between the neighborhoods OTR, West End, and Cuff, and continues to serve as an important part of our shared infrastructure. As such, it seems mitigation should include replacement of the bridge. So I think, Brandon, you've kind of talked about the mitigation for the section 106. If you want to tackle that question or comment.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate the comment. I don't know what else to really say about it. Yeah, I agree, I guess. It seems mitigation, a replacement bridge can incorporate a lot of mitigation that honors that historic significance of the original bridge, for sure. But even in a non-replacement option, we can still do that from a truly historic perspective. Obviously the connectivity part of it, maintaining that exact connection is kind of one step further, honoring that historic connection there. But I maybe take a minute to kind of point out that as far as the connection goes, we think of it primarily as going over top of Central Parkway, which it is, and that's an important connection. But even alternative 4, where we remove the bridge, we still have a connection between Mcmillan and Central Parkway, which which really at its core is what the bridge is doing. It's traversing that vertical change in height from Mcmillan down to Central Parkway. It just so happens to do it to the south side of Central Parkway. The alternative 4 maintains that connection. It just maintains it from West Mcmillan down to the north side of Central Parkway. And depending on which side of Central Parkway you're wanting to be on, once you make that connection, or which side of Central Parkway you're coming from, determines whether or not you actually have to cross the street. So it's conceivable even with the bridge that you use the bridge, but then you also have to cross Central Parkway. So I guess it's important to consider the connection in the larger context of what it's doing, and it doesn't necessarily eliminate the need to cross Central Parkway at the crosswalk.
Abby, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Thanks. We got a chat comment that says, I walk and bike nearly every day under the bridge. There is not a problem with either. So maybe Brandon, you kind of want to talk about the purpose of the project?
Yeah, that's great. I think there are plenty of able-bodied people who can make their way under the bridge. It's not really a nice crossing, in my opinion, particularly if you're going under the south end and there's the trash there, and it attracts encampments and whatnot. It could certainly be better, I guess. But again, we appreciate everyone's comments. We want to hear everyone's perspective of using the bridge. And so, all those comments, everybody's comments are important here.
Great. And the same commenter said that the sculpture at the end of the Brighton Bridge was created by the late sculptor Pat Rennick. She had a studio across the street for many years. So thank you for your comment. That is really cool. We got another chat comment that asks, has sorta weighed in? How would buses go to their barn if the bridge is torn down, but the left turn from Mcmillan isn't going to happen until 2028? Buses from Ravine to Central Parkway won't work.
So they haven't weighed in on that particular issue, but we will certainly be sure to follow up with them on that and respond to that question.
Great. Thank you. All right. A couple more questions here. How will you reduce trash accumulation if you build a new bridge?
Any of the options for a new bridge would get rid of that open area that's underneath the south support columns there, in that curved area under the bridge. Essentially, the pier columns that sit right next to the roadway currently would be moved back so that the sidewalk can pass straight through. And then the area that's now open under those, in and around those columns would be closed, would be solid, closed in. And so there wouldn't be that invitation to be under there, to seek shelter, to set up a camp, and to leave trash and debris behind. And a similar situation on the north side, the new support on that side would be moved back away from the roadway more to allow for a full width sidewalk to pass through and sort of eliminate that little wedge behind the column where the slope comes down, and it tends to, trash tends to get caught back in that little space.
Yep, probably have turn back walls to again kind of enclose that area so it's not open.
Correct.
Great. So this comment and question is a little bit along the same lines. It asks, the stairs on the side of the Mockbee are littered with trash and paraphernalia. How would option 4 be any different than these stairs other than providing wheelchair access?
Well, I do think that option 4 would create a more open area. Would be removing some trees and to grade the hillside and to put the switchback sidewalks in, you're not, it's opening that area up a little bit more. So hopefully there's just not as much debris just left there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's sort of a reality that we deal with. No matter what you do or build, someone's going to trash it up at some point, probably. So from that standpoint, I don't, we. The only other thing that I'd mention to what Brad said is that we would probably most likely add lighting to that space. It would be more well lit. Otherwise, it would be more open. It would be probably the two biggest things.
Great, thank you. A question about the alternative 4. How steep would the ramps or pathway be on the hillside? It looks like it would be hard for someone in a wheelchair to use.
So actually the reason for the ramps being as long as they are is so that somebody with a wheelchair can use them. The slopes are relatively flat. At maximum, they would be 8%, and that would only be for a 30-foot section before you come to a landing spot or a flat area. We can obviously go flatter than that. It'll just be, how do we make up the elevation difference? But that is why we have the switchback, so that somebody with accessibility issues can make their way from Central Parkway up to Mcmillan.
Thanks, Brad. So we don't have any more questions in the chat box. No more callers. Brad, do you want to discuss? We'll give a couple more minutes for those who are finishing up, maybe have another question or comment. Brad, do you want to review, just go over some of the pros and cons with the alternatives? Okay, great.
Yeah. So the no build option. So we got the 4 options again. Option or alternative. Alternative 1, the no build alternative. The pros are that we're maintaining the connection. There's no impacts to the historically eligible bridge, and essentially no construction costs. The cons here are that we are not meeting addressing the structural deficiency of the bridge. So again, the bridge only has about a 5 to 15 year lifespan left, and not doing anything is not addressing that structural deficiency. We have the pedestrian and bike access issues under the bridge on Central Parkway, the poor vertical clearance at the south end of the bridge under Central Parkway for trucks getting through there, and then again the high life cycle costs. And the life cycle costs would include needing to replace the bridge at some point. So alternative 2 is the full bridge replacement, removing the existing and full vehicular and pedestrian bridge replacement. So the pros there are that it fixes that structural deficiency. We're maintaining that the PED and pedestrian and vehicular connection between Mcmillan and Central Parkway and Central Avenue. We're improving the pedestrian and bike access along Central Parkway. We're improving the vertical clearance for trucks on Central Parkway. And then relative to the other alternatives, low life cycle cost. The cons for this alternative for the full bridge replacement, again, we're impacting this historically eligible bridge and then the high construction cost. Alternative 3, the bridge removal and replacement with a pedestrian only bridge. Again, we're addressing the structural deficiency of the bridge. We're maintaining a pedestrian connection from Mcmillan to Central Avenue, Central Parkway. We're improving the pedestrian and bike access on Central Parkway under the bridge, improving the vertical clearances under the bridge, and low life cycle costs. Adverse impacts, again, the historical impacts, or the cons here are the adverse impacts to the historical eligible bridge, mid to high construction costs, and we lose the vehicular connection, that direct connection of Brighton. And then alternative 4, just totally removing the bridge, not replacing it, just doing the pedestrian ramps. The pros here, we fix the structural deficiencies. We are creating the PED connection from Mcmillan down to Central Parkway. We are improving the pedestrian and bike access on Central Parkway, where we don't even have any vertical clearance issues anymore. Very low construction costs relative to the other project or the other alternatives, and then low life cycle costs, essentially maintaining the sidewalk where the new switchback will be up to Mcmillan. The cons for alternative 4, again, adversely affecting the bridge, the historical aspects of the bridge, and then we're losing that direct pedestrian and vehicular connection that the Brighton Bridge approach provided. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. So we haven't gotten any more questions in the chat, and we don't have any more callers. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Ursula, who is going to review how you can provide comments after tonight's meeting. Thanks. Ursula, if you're saying anything, you might be on mute.
Thank you, and sorry about that. Thanks,
That's
Abby.
okay. Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for all your comments and questions. We really value your feedback. We've got some homework to do as a result, but really appreciate it. The best way, not the only, but the best way to give us your feedback, in addition to what you've said tonight, is via a survey, an online survey that's on our website for the project. And I think Brandon's mentioned it several times. It's cincinnati-oh.gov and then /Brighton. That'll take you to the web page, and you will see a link for a survey. It's called, we call it your feedback. So that would be ideal if you can do that. But otherwise, please email or call. Additionally, if you'd like, our contact information is posted here. Again, also on the website. And we'll also have a recording of tonight's presentation on our DOTE, Department of Transportation, YouTube channel. That'll be posted in a day or two. So it'll be obvious when you go to the web page where that is. We don't have a customized URL for our YouTube channel yet, but it will be available via the web page for Brighton. So with that, thank you again and wish you all a pleasant evening and appreciate your time.